I request Dr. Veda to introduce the speaker.
I offer my humble salutations at His divine lotus feet. With His divine grace, I have an extraordinary privilege this evening to introduce our second guest speaker of the retreat, Brother Arnel Ramdath. He was born and brought up in Canada and now lives in Trinidad and Tobago. When he lost his mother in 1985, Swami assumed the role of his mother. He assured his dad that he would become the mother of Arnel and his younger sister, Meera. He kept his promise by modifying the admission deadline in his secondary school to give him admission in the 8th grade in the year 1986. When Arnel found it hard to adapt to the hot, spicy Royal meal, food was prepared separately for him for nearly 5 years plus by Bhagwan. When he said he was missing his sister because of male and female segregation in his institute, Swami made the weekend meetings between the siblings possible as a special case. Who else would do except a Divine Mother? He went on to become a BCom graduate at Brindavan campus and had the unique honor and privilege to perform in Prashanti Bhajan group and Brindavan Bhajan group. In fact, after completing his commerce, he overstayed in the hospital for 1 year with a promise from Bhagavan that he would give him an MBA seat. He was thinking that it was an MBA seat in his Sathya Sai Institute of Highest Learning, and little did he realize that it was not in India, but in a prestigious world-class business school in Bocconi, Milan, in 2008. He works as a director of HealthTech company in Trinidad and is happily married. He is celebrating his wedding anniversary today, May the 23rd, with all of us sharing his story to highlight his glory. The floor is yours, Arnel.
Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. O mere Sai, O mere Baba, तुझ बिन कौन सहारा, तुम ही रखवाला। ओ मेरे साई, मेरे बाबा, offering my most humble and loving pranams at Bhagwan's lotus feet. Respected elders, sisters, brothers, respected Naganan sir, Sairam. Technical difficulties from the beginning. When I first learned that the theme of this year's retreat was, or is, take one step to me, I'll take 100 towards you. It took me into some deep reflection as to what are the steps that my family, myself, took unknowingly. And I say unknowingly because I think at the beginning, when we first hear about Bhagwan, we don't realize the steps that we take towards him. And it made me contemplate and reflect what brought us to Bhagwan. What were those steps? So this evening, I would like to share a few of these experiences with all of you and share my journey, the steps. So it looks like that when you plan something, there's always a master planner. And we are destined to just look and admire Bhagwan's wonderful, beautiful Sai Sundara face. So my family's journey started in 1976. We were visiting we are immigrants from the West Indies, from Trinidad and Tobago, and we were on a visit back home, and my father had gone to a local store, street store, somewhere in his little town, and there was this photo of Bhagwan. And there was it just captivated him. There was some attraction that he couldn't understand. He didn't know who Swami was. So he bought this little photo of Swami, and on the first occasion when he had a chance, he asked his godfather, Swami Satchitananda, who is in this photo? Who is in this photo? And Swami Satchitananda told him, he is God. With those words from his guru, from his godfather, my father brought this picture back home to Toronto, and he placed it on an altar. And I say an altar because I don't recall us being very religious at the time. I remember, yes, when there was festivals, we would do prayers, but I come from a blended family, meaning my mother was Christian, a Presbyterian, and I used to attend church with her on Sundays and go to Sunday school. So for 3 years, this photo was in our house. And I must say, my father continued to pray to it, while my mother and I continued to ridicule it. I say that very shamefully and embarrassingly, but that's the truth. Because in Trinidad, we have 50% Africans, 50% Indians. Sorry? And, you know, seeing this photo of a person who looked Indian but had an afro hairstyle, it was, you know, confounding. Fast forward to 1979, and we learned that my mother was terminally ill with leukemia. It was just a matter of months that she had of life left. They went to the Canadian doctors and it was futile. So at this point, my father, you know, he tells my mother, you know, why don't you go to this, you know, this Sai Baba? Maybe he'll help you. Maybe he can cure you. I hear that, you know, he can perform miracles. So, you know, my mother, she had resigned to the fact at this point and was willing to do anything. But she reminded him and said, you know, okay, I'm ready to do it, but we don't have any finances left now. There's no money. To which my father had no response. Miraculously, next one. Miraculously, the next day, so now starts the first steps. The first, you know, as Swami says, miracles are my calling cards. The first one happens. The bank calls and said, oh, we're very sorry, we made an error. There was charges and whatnot, they have been refunded. So of course the amount is enough for one person to reach Prashanti and Brindavan. My mother arrived, thank you. Okay. My mother arrived in Prashanti and Brindavan, and the next steps started. She was still skeptical. So when Swami called her for an interview and said, he materialized 3 vibhuti balls for her, and he said, take this and your cancer will be cancelled. So my mother was, how did he know I have cancer? 1. 2. When you go back to Canada, I didn't tell him I was from Canada. 3. You will get a gift from me. Fast forward. My mother returns back to Toronto, goes to the hospital, the same doctors that she saw just weeks, not months, just weeks prior, and there was 0 trace of leukemia. But Swami did say, I will give you a gift. So of course, the thought was that the gift was she was cured. No. The gift was she was now pregnant with my baby sister, which is not possible when you have leukemia. This was the start of our journey. These were the first steps. A year later, we found ourselves in Prashanti and Brindavan, and Swami blessed us. On our first day as we sat there, he called us for an interview. You know, I was a 7-year-old boy. How old are you? 15, so half your age, right? Yeah. So probably half your size too. And I sat there and I witnessed, you know, this person I kept seeing in these photos now standing in front of me, and I was mesmerized. I sat there quietly and I saw him materialize vibhuti. I saw him materialize a gold pendant for my sister, who was now born. I saw him materialize a silver ring for my father. I just, wow. So at the first instant when I got a chance, I somehow found the courage and I stood up and I said, Baba, I want to play tabla. Swami looked at me, probably a little confused, where this little guy suddenly came up and found this courage to just stand up and talk to him. But he was so gracious and so loving. I remember Swami took my hands and he squeezed them. And he said, you will play. It would take me years later. I pondered these words very often in my life while growing up. Swami said, you will play. But I said I wanted to play tabla. But Swami said, you will play. And I wondered, was it a grammatical error that Swami made? Why didn't he say, you will play tabla? Fast forward again to 25 years later. I had attended a satsang, a bhajan session in Toronto, and a 7-year-old child came up to me after the satsang. By this time, I had learned to play more than just tabla. I had learned to play a few other instruments as well. And this little child came up to me after satsang and said, Brother, is it true that Swami held your hands and told you that you can play all instruments? So I immediately said, no, that's not true. Swami didn't say that. But it hit me like a bolt of lightning. What Swami had said 25 years prior. And I questioned it and I pondered his words versus what I thought the words should have been. What I thought the grammar was or should have been. And how his words were correct. When I think about this and Swami's blessings, this quote from Bhagwan comes to mind. All your skills, talents, and abilities are actually God's gifts to you. What you do with them should be your offering to God. I sit in front of Brother Dujati here, one of our most talented, humble alumni, and I think how he has been a beacon of this quote from Bhagwan. So, back to our first visit, a few weeks later, Bhagwan was now in Whitefield, and this photo, my father took this photo as we sat outside the interview room waiting for Swami. And it's a special photo for our family because it actually has 4 generations. My great-grandmother on the left, my mother, my sister, and my grandmother on the right. So you can see my sister is tiny. She's 5 months old at this point. We were in the interview room, and Swami was in the private interview room with another family. My sister was lying on my mother's lap, and she was drinking her milk, and my mother holding the bottle. Now, these are not the light plastic ones. These are those old glass ones, big, heavy ones, just to keep her quiet. Suddenly, she pulled out the bottle from her mouth and said, "My Baba, my Baba." 5 years old. 5 months old, sorry. This is not the beautiful part. The beautiful part is a few minutes later when Swami came out from the private interview room, Swami takes his handkerchief, wipes his mouth, looks at her and says, "Yes, my Baba." that tenderness of Bhagwan. He was in another room speaking with other devotees, and he heard that the first 3 words of this little baby around another wall, and how loud would it have been? Fast forwarding, we had returned to Canada, and maybe a year or 2 later, we were sitting in a restaurant. And given that my sister was a gift from Bhagawan, my parents had decided that she would be a vegetarian from birth. So we sat in this restaurant, and they had nothing vegetarian. So they figured they had to give her something to eat. So they decided, okay, they'll order a soup and just remove the meat and give it to her. As she took that first bite, spoonful, she fell off the chair, hit her chin against the edge of the table, and bit through her tongue. It was profusely bleeding, so much so that we were probably about 5 minutes away from Toronto's Sick Kids Hospital, the premier hospital in Toronto for children, for pediatrics. Of course, there was a frenzy. My mother pulled out a vibhuti pack from her bag, sprinkled it on her tongue, and we just rushed to the hospital. 5-minute drive. 10 minutes by the time she's entered an ER. No cut, not a drop of blood. Swami's vibhuti. The things that we see, we're used to seeing Swami materialize vibhuti every day. Sometimes we forget. Sometimes it slips us. We don't willingly forget, but it happens. In 1985, tragedy struck as the extension that Swami had granted my mother had now come to its end. My mother passed away, and we went to Prashanti and fell at Bhagwan's feet. And during this time, Swami instructed my father to bring my sister and myself back in June to join his schools. And Swami made a profound statement at that time. He said, I am now their mother. They are my responsibility. And Swami chanted, Tvameva Mata Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhu Chasaka Tvameva. Swami chanted the whole mantra for us as he told us this. And he hugged us. He clasped our hands and hugged us both. From that day, Swami, I was speaking to Uncle Veda earlier today, and he actually was the one that brought back these memories. And Swami bent so many rules for us. It's, when I think about it, I'm, again, ashamed and grateful at the same time for the things that Swami did to make us so happy and comfortable in his institutions. When we joined, as Uncle had mentioned, it was very difficult. It was a culture shock. A little boy from Canada, a little girl, even smaller, from Canada, used to West Indian and Canadian food, suddenly finding ourselves in Prashanti and in Andhra Pradesh, where rasam and sambar is, the spiciest possible. Learning what an idli and a vada was, masala dosa was it was incredible. It was very difficult. I couldn't eat it. And, every day Swami would come and he would inquire and ask, how are you? See, this is God asking me in my mind. I didn't know that whatever I said had repercussions. Repercussions for the elders who were in charge, responsible. So anything I said, it would come back to them and they would get new instructions from Swami. I see Naganand sir smiling, so I'm I'm guessing that you relate very well with this. And Swami would come, and one day he asked me, and I said, Swami, the food is it's very difficult. It's too spicy. So promptly the warden would get a call, the vice chancellor would get a call, and Swami would make arrangements. So for the next 5 years, every evening, I was an only student that had separate food made for me so that I can eat in the hostel. When Swami asked me again the next time, Swami, I'm missing my sister. So then now something unthinkable happened, which of course I never knew these things back then. Swami arranged that every weekend the teachers from primary school would bring my sister to the boys' hostel. And she would stay with me for an hour or two, and then they would take her back. These were the unthinkable, unimaginable things back in those days because they never happened. And this was how Swami continued to make our adjustments easier. Take one step towards me, I take 100 towards you. Swami wasn't taking 100s, he was running. He was taking thousands for two little useless children. A few years later, I had joined Brindavan campus, and the first year was 1992. We were there for Mahashivratri. Swami didn't permit us to come back to Prashanti Nilayam because it was too close to our final exams. So as we sat there in the Kalyan Mandapam, the boys were on the right side. There was flower petals path in the center, and the lady Sevadals were on the left, and devotees were behind. So in the middle of the night, while bhajans were going on, a couple of us noticed the flower petals were moving. First thing is to think, it's the fans, it's the ants, it's the insects underneath. And you kind of dismiss it. But there was a pattern. And that pattern was, they were moving, and then they were moving there, and then moving there. Maybe it's the ants underneath. Fast forward, we left it at that. Fast forward, a couple of weeks later, Bhagwan came to Brindavan, and one evening, it was common practice. Swami would bless students and senior devotees to come in his residence on the evenings and have what we call Trey sessions. So one evening, Swami sat on his jula. He asked, boys, any questions today? So one of the boys, Before asking this question, Swami said, your Mahashivratri bhajans, it was very good. I came. And he went on to speak, about other things. It was just a one-off statement Swami made. So a few minutes later, when Swami asked this question, one of the boys raised their hands and they said, Swami, earlier you had said Mahashivratri bhajans, were very good, and you came. But Swami, I don't understand. How can you come if you're omnipresent? How can you come if you're omnipresent? So Swami looked at him so lovingly and he said, good question. And then Swami went on to respond. And he said, when you sing with your hearts full of love and devotion, I am forced to manifest. I am forced to physically be there. Where my devotees sing, thinking of me, I establish myself there. Of course, that's when we realized the petals, and it all came, flooding back. A few years later, we were doing some work again in Brindavan, and in Swami's residence, a few of us, and Swami had decided now that he was going back to Prashanti Nilayam. So he had selected a few of us and said, okay, you three or four will ride in my car behind me. So Swami gave us this unique opportunity to ride in his silver car and follow him directly, his car. So, I'm tall. So as soon as we came out, I immediately called shotgun. I wanted to be in the passenger seat in the front. Also more importantly, because I wanted to see Swami's car all the way through, undisturbed. So the other boy said, okay, you called it, sure. I called it first, dibs. Funnily enough, when we reached back in Prashanti Nilayam, Swami has this way of pretending, that he doesn't know. So he asked and he inquired, so who sat in the front? So I said, Swami, I did, Swami. So he looked at me, and he looked at another one of the boys. He was a little bit built, let's say, right? Hefty. And he looked at me and he looked at him. So he looked at me this way and he looked at him like this way. and then Swami says, see, you are Lambu, but he's a Pakoda. He should have sat in the front. And these are, when you think about it, yes, Swami has this humorous way of imparting these lessons. But in that small one-liner that Swami said, he taught you to have consideration. He taught how you must also look beyond yourself and what you want and make that sacrifice. A few years later, Swami had gone to Kodaikanal, and he had left an instruction with me. My father was coming for that particular vacation, and he had left an instruction with me saying, when your father comes, come to Kodaikanal. So we followed Swami Bhagwan's instructions, and as we arrived there, I used to sit outside with the few other students that were there. And the students that Swami selected to come with him, they were inside in Swami's residence and then for bhajans in the bhajan hall. So one evening, as I sat waiting for darshan, I got a message. Swami has asked you to join the bhajan group. I was thrilled. We live for these opportunities, right? And every day now I used to be part of the bhajan group. And on the festivals, so Ugadi, Tamil New Year, the day before Swami was leaving, Swami would instruct the boys that they should tell me, they should invite me to come in for dinner with them and Swami. This was new to me because I had no clue what used to be going on inside. All we know is that the boys used to just disappear, and Swami used to also disappear, and that was all. So I went in, and it was fantastic. This wonderful experience. I just took it as Swami's grace. I didn't think of anything beyond that. And On the last day, Swami had also told them, make sure that I get a chance to do arti just like each of them. So of course I was oblivious to all of this at the time. I was told these things later. On that last day, when Swami instructed them for arti, Swami told them, he said, you must have gratitude. Because he sacrificed time away from his family and he was there to support you and join the bhajan group. Therefore, you must do these things. See, what gratitude they should have. It's us that have gratitude for everything that Swami gives us, every chance, every opportunity. But it's a life lesson. And this is again another lesson from Bhagwan about sacrifice and gratitude. Another one step. Later that year, Swami had blessed me with this chance to be a staff bearer at the convocation. And, it's a very unique blessing from Bhagwan because Swami only chooses 2 boys a year for this. And, there was this way of thinking among students that, when Swami gives you a big opportunity like that, after that, that's it. You're not going to hear from Swami. You're not going to exist for Swami, physically. So, after this blessing from Bhagwan, I felt disturbed. And the next few days after convocation, I didn't sit in my regular spots in the front with bhajan group and whatnot. I kind of sat in the back thinking, well, I might as well get used to it from now itself. So, it's self-punishment. So, Swami passed and he noticed that, and this is in the bhajan hall, all the boys had come forward. And me, no. There was space and then me. I stubbornly had, didn't move. Swami looked at me, frowned, and looked away. From that frown, I immediately understood I had erred. And of course, the first opportunity that I had, I tried to ask Bhagwan forgiveness. Eventually, I was forgiven. But, the lesson is that we should never let our follies dictate what Swami is going to do for us, what Swami wants for us. That was the lesson that was imparted from that small incident with Bhagwan. We're stuck again. So, later that year, the next year, Bhagwan had selected me as one of the boys to actually accompany him to Kodaikanal. And during this time, I had an opportunity to speak in front of Bhagwan, and I had narrated this experience, this incident with my mother, and how he had cured her. During that speech, I kept highlighting that she was a non-believer of Bhagwan. In my mind, it was because I wanted to highlight Swami's benevolence, Swami's show of compassion equal to everyone, whether you were or were not, who you were not, how you were, or how you were not. In my overenthusiasm, I kept repeating this. Later, when we were in the kitchen, Swami called me and he said, you spoke very well, but you kept saying that your mother was a non-devotee, a non-believer. He said, you said it so many times that you changed the focus. And the focus became more on the negative. I thought about it, and it took me years again to understand it. How precise Swami's words were. How that, just that little incorrect word changed that whole story. So while narrating it tonight, you will have noticed I didn't say it. A few days later, I had fallen sick. And there's a back end story to this. A few months earlier, I was feeling unwell regularly, and I had gotten some blood tests done. I had gotten some blood tests done, and during the tests, it was found that my blood count was severely off, and I needed to take tablets for the next 7-8 months, 5-6 tablets every day to bring it down and whatnot. But because Bhagwan had already told me privately, that he was going to take me to Kodaikanal with him, I didn't want to risk it. So I just kept it quiet. I took that result, I threw it away, and ignored it, pretended it didn't exist. So in Kodaikanal, I had a relapse. And the next evening, I had waited outside Bhagwan's bedroom before he retired. And I gave him one little letter. I said, "Dearest Bhagwan, I would like to speak to you about my blood test results." That's all. Swami, so this is a photo of Swami just before he closes his door and retires for the night. Just before he closed it, he asked for this little note and took it with him. The next morning, as I was unwell, I didn't bother to go for breakfast. I just sat at Swami's chair and waited for him. So as Swami came and we were all seated around him, inadvertently he looks at me, and Dr. Reddy was there as well, and he said, "This boy is sick." And then Swami now starts to ask me, "You have this symptom, you have that, you have this." And Swami goes and starts to list out everything. See, my earnest request was I wanted to speak to Bhagwan about my blood test result. But here is Bhagwan showing his omniscience, showing his maternal love, and telling me everything, and showing me his medical love too. So, in the end, Swami says, "Don't worry, I will look after you." And we left it at that. A few days pass, and we are riding in a bus with Swami. And Swami suddenly looks at me and says, "How are you feeling?" So I said, "Swami, ups and downs. Today I'm okay," right? He said, "Yes, I know." And then he materializes 9 tablets. He gives them to me and he says, "Take one every day." That was the instruction. Okay. So I took it and I'm holding it, and I went back to my place. So then Swami says, no, take one now. So, I've never taken a tablet without water. Never. So this was new. Now, how you can't tell Swami, "No, Swami, I need water, I want water." Okay. Swami says, "Take a tablet," you take it, right? So I popped the tablet in my mouth, and it was bitter. It was so bitter. Swami now looks at me and he says, "The tablet is a bit bitter, no?" So I said, "Yes, Swami." Swami takes his glass of water and he says, "Here, drink." I refused. I said, no, Swami, that's your water. Right? So Swami said, hey, Dhanupoda, I'm giving it to you, drink. I said, no, Swami, that is your glass of water. So Swami then, he says, okay. He drinks. He says, I'm done. Now it's yours. And he made me drink it. That is Swami's compassion. Fast forward to 9 days later, we are now in Brindavan, and I'm horrible. On that last 9th day, I was bedridden. The warden comes to see me, and I say, sir, I'm not sure what it is. Please, inform Swami. So he says, maybe you should do one thing first. Go to the hospital and get another blood test done. And with that, I'll take it to Swami, and then I can tell Swami. So I go to the hospital in the morning. By the afternoon, I come back to the hostel, and I'm starting to feel normal. Normal. By the time darshan comes, I'm now sitting there for darshan in Sai Ramesh Hall. No symptoms, nothing. At a certain point, one of the boys comes and they give me an envelope. And they say, hey, the warden asked us to give this to you. I open the envelope, and it is my blood count result, completely normal, in 9 days. This is Swami's power. When Swami makes a promise to you, he will never let it go. You will let it go. You will forget it. And I'm guilty of that. We're all guilty of that. But he will never let it go. I'll divert for a second here because Uncle had mentioned earlier about this MBA seat. So a couple of years later, Swami had told me, I'm going to give you an MBA seat. I'll give you an MBA seat. Okay. I took it for granted that Swami meant in his institutions. And that would not be the case. I would end up leaving Prashanti in 1995, having completed my BCom. Fast forward now to 2008. One of Swami's last instructions before I had left was to do an MBA. Go back to Canada and do an MBA. So I applied to every possible university in Toronto, and not one university would accept me. Not one business school would accept me. Because I had lived in Milan previously, I don't know why it took me so long to remember this, but I suddenly remembered that Milan had a good business school. So I applied. I checked and they had a program. But, Swami had said, do your MBA in Canada. So how can I go to Italy and do an MBA when Swami's instruction was Canada? Swami has a wonderful way of doing things ahead, but behind, before we can understand and before we will know. It so happened, I got accepted in this university, in this program. Even here there's a miracle, because to get into this program, you have to do your GMAT. I got in without doing a GMAT. Power magically disappeared during the middle of the exam. My written exam was good. My computer part of the exam was horrible. I contested it because I was like, how could it doesn't match up, right? How could I be good in writing, but the same English in the computer part wasn't correct? They said, okay, you can rewrite it. I said, okay. Before I could rewrite it, I got an acceptance letter. that was the seat that Bhagwan promised. But this Canada part is still hanging. So I joined 2008. 2009 did the first part. The program was connected to other universities. And in 2010, my last year, they had a partnership with a university in Toronto, Canada. And there it was fulfilled. Not one word of Swami's goes without meaning. So coming back to Kodaikanal, sorry for that sidestep there. Coming back to Kodaikanal, there was one morning Swami came down, and Swami was very upset with us, very disappointed. We were these selected few students who were staying with Bhagwan. This was every Sai student's dream to go to Kodaikanal with Swami. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And Swami, felt that we had let it get to our heads that, we were those chosen ones, like the apostles. So Swami would not eat. We were all crying. It was like a tragedy, Shakespeare tragedy. In the evening time when we were preparing for bhajans, nobody wanted to sing because we were too emotional. We were too hurt from seeing Swami hurt and knowing that we were the cause of that. So, for many years, from the time I became a Sai student, I had this burning desire to be able to sing in front of Swami. And in Kodaikanal, that's the easiest place to get that permission from Swami to sing in front of him. But up until that day, I still had not asked Swami permission to sing. So that evening, the boys, they kind of pushed me and said, listen, Arnel, you're one of the senior boys, you're one of the leaders, in the bhajan group there. Maybe you should sing this evening. And I too felt like I should sing because, Swami is upset with me. So I felt it was the only way to appeal to Swami. That evening I sang my first bhajan. Prema Ishwar hai, Ishwar prema hai, har dhadkan mein Sai sama hai, Ishwar prema hai. The next day, Swami didn't say anything, but the next morning, Swami came down. And he was a little, should I say friendlier? He was more relaxed. Swami, it almost became the inverse now. Swami was normal, but we were scared. We were now, afraid to do anything. So Swami's talking, Swami's cracking a joke, and we were not laughing. We were just, we didn't know. So the second day, now for bhajans, same thing happened. We were still, in our shells. So the boys, they came and they said, hey, you sang yesterday. Swami didn't say anything. So, maybe you should sing today as well. So I sang, Prema Mai Sai Ma Jnana Mai Sai Ma. That evening, Swami was now absolutely normal. So much so, Swami started to make fun of us just before dinner time. Swami came dinner, he coaxed all of us to eat. So things are now, let's say, back to normal. Now comes the moment. The third day, it's bhajans time, and the boy said, listen, you sang 2 days in a row, Swami didn't say anything. Swami's happy with us. If Swami didn't want you to sing or had a problem, he would have already told you something by now. So, I was a little smarter than that, and I said, no. I said, let me not push it. Let me, do it the correct way. I took 2 days of risk. No need for the third day. So that day I had convinced myself, absolutely, I'm not singing. Mentally, I was totally convinced. So convinced that I did not pick up the harmonium, I did not practice, I did nothing. Okay. So, just to give a little bit of perspective, for that trip, my spot for bhajans was literally right at Swami's feet. Bhajans had started, I was playing tabla, and suddenly Swami, the bhajan had ended, and as the boy was about to pass the mic to the following singer, not the next bhajan, that bhajan was about to start, Swami looked at him, told him, no, pass the mic to me. I went into panic mode. So Swami looked at me and said, yes, you sing next. Okay. And then Swami closed his eyes and went into bliss. I quickly passed the tabla over to the next boy. And in my mind, I'm trying to think now, I'm drawing a blank. What am I going to sing? What am I going to do? I suddenly feel something fall in my lap. I look down, it's a pen and a paper. I just wrote my Shruti, one Madhyam, and I threw it back to whoever. Because I was scared Swami opens his eyes immediately and catches me with this pen and paper writing down. Okay, time for my bhajan to start. One Madhyam is put. For those who are familiar, that is F scale in Western notation. Govinda Madhava Gopala Keshava Anant. Right? So it's actually one pancham, C scale. I wrote F scale, which is 4 scales higher. As I reached the high line, I cracked. I could not reach. And of course, Swami's face was there. Right from the second line itself, it was evident that the Shruti was wrong. So, what to do? Luckily, our revered Sailesh sir, always the savior, was there, and he took over the budget because he could reach. I put down my head and, and Swami, okay. Bhajans end, and, Sailesh sir comes to me and he says, see, if you had at least written the first word, the first line, I would have known it was one pancham, not one madhyam. So I said, sir, I'm so sorry, sir, I just blanked, It's not even a bhajan I used to sing regularly. That's the funniest thing. Okay. Now what to do? So I went and I waited for Swami at the door. And as Swami came, I was actually in the atrium outside. It was just Swami and myself. And now a piece of Maya comes into this. Swami starts up, hey Dhanupoda, how you sang? Now of course I didn't know, but P. Sushila Amma was opposite to me. And he's like, how you sang? P. Sushila was also there, she also heard you, and I, whole works are getting. So I said, Swami, I'm so sorry, Swami, I'm sorry, Swami. And then Swami said, Papam, it wasn't your fault. Sorry, yes, it wasn't your fault. It was the harmonium player's fault. He gave you wrong Shruti. So I suddenly, I thought, maybe it was the harmonium, maybe it wasn't me. And then I suddenly remembered my conversation with Sailesh sir. And then I said, no, Swami, it was me only. He didn't, it was my fault only, Swami. I took full responsibility. And then again I started. Then again I got, So Swami then says, you must be ever ready, like the battery. Always ready, ever ready. One of you had pointed this out there, right? That's the story. So, to whom much is given, much is expected in return. That's a quote that we know. With Bhagwan, this quote exists, but it doesn't exist. Because in reality, it's like, we are running in overdraft sometimes, or sometimes we're running in over credit. But essentially, it's the same when you think about it. And, when Swami gives you a lot, it makes the silence in between harder to bear. For 15 years after I left as a student, Swami never spoke to me. And that was heartbreak for me. Going Prashanti Nilayam, seeing Bhagwan, being blessed by Bhagwan, being accommodated by Bhagwan to witness so much and be a receiver of his love and compassion, of his miracles, to now almost feeling discarded. It's very easy now to say, hey, we don't need to be focused, we don't need to be in bhajans, we don't need to do seva, we don't need to attend our sai centers, we don't need, why? But actually, I want to say no. It's all the more in those times that we have to be committed. We have to be determined, dedicated. 15 years later, our class had the opportunity to return to Bhagwan in Prema Bandham. And this was around the pilgrimage time that everyone had gone back. Every country had come to Swami to offer cultural programs in 2010. And Swami lovingly allowed us, inserted us into a separate program during that time. And when we were all seated there in the bhajan hall around Swami, and Swami had called me, and he started to complain about, not complain, but, tell me that, you gave some computers and all to a school, and, you're not supposed to do it like that. We have our seva organization, and, and I was oblivious because I had no idea what Swami was referring to. So then Swami said, call your father. So my father is now there. Two of us are around. And he had never told me that they had done a separate project where they helped a Sai school directly. So Brother Satyajit was there, and then he helped us understand what Swami was referring to. And Swami revealed something here and said, see, we have our seva organization. All activities must be streamlined through the seva organization. Right? It's great that we do seva, of course, but we have our organization. During that same Prema Bandham, Swami had materialized this pendant, and he had called one of the boy's fathers and he asked him, who is this? He looked at it and he said, Swami, this is Sri Ram. He said, no, look carefully. He said, oh no, Swami, it's Lord Krishna, Sri Krishna Bhagwan. So at this point, Swami called me and he put it around me and he said, do Ram Nam. So I'm of course, I didn't look at the pendant until after. See, why am I going to look at Sri Krishna when Sai Krishna is sitting in front of me? So, afterwards when I saw it, I was like, but Swami said do Ram Nam, but it's Lord Krishna. Like, did Swami mean, Lord Krishna? I go back again to thinking what we think Swami said versus what Swami actually says. A few weeks later, I was sitting for satsang, for bhajans in Milan. This was during my master's. And I had gone intent that it was my first session since returning. And, I wanted to really sing Chita Chora Yashoda Ke Bal, Navanita Chora Gopal. Since Swami had given me this pendant. While I was there, and we were preparing the bhajan list, one devotee came and said, I would really, really like for you to do Allah Tumaho, Ishwar Tumaho. So in my heart of hearts, I said, I really wanted to do a Lord Krishna, Chita Chora Yashoda Ke Bal. But I always taught the bhajan group that you must always sing not what you want, but what is right for the group, what is right for the session. So now it seemed like a contradiction. I said to myself, okay, Allah Tumaho. While I was singing Mere Ram, Rama Rahim, I had added on a third speed. So vibrations were high. It was the last bhajan. We were all singing Mere Ram, Rama Rahim. And Swami's garland just fell and broke. The flowers fell down from the altar and broke. Do Ram Nam. We might interchange the name, but at the end of the day, all names are one. And this was again Swami's wonderful way of saying, Ram Nam, just sing the name of God. Swami has an abundance of love, of compassion. And returning back to the theme of the retreat, take one step towards me, I'll take 100 towards you. I've tried to encapsulate how, in your own way, if each of us take our steps to Bhagwan, we will find that He has taken so many hundreds of steps towards us. Sometimes it's just that we miss it because we don't realize it at the time. As I've shown you in my case, I'm a professional at that with Bhagwan, it seems. We must remember that, the steps are going to be different sizes. All steps are not the same. We might even slip because we're flawed. But it does not mean that we cannot pick ourselves back up and get back on track and continue with those steps. Because when the time comes and we are faced with a difficult moment, if you have that faith, and if you have done your duty, and if you've continued following those steps, the path to Him, He will respond. Why will He respond? Simply because He has no choice. He has no choice. Isn't that what He's here for us for? Does Bhagwan not say that we must submit all our prayers to Him? That is His duty towards us. I'd like to close with one last experience actually. Around 1993, up until 1993, bhajans used to close with Om Shanti Shanti Shanti, Jai Bolo Bhagwan Sri Sathya Sai Baba Ji Ki Jai. There was no Loka Samasta, Sukhino Bhavantu. How did that come about? Anyone familiar with that? No. It was from foreign devotees. So we were in Kodaikanal, and Swami, after bhajan, Swami would return, and the devotees would stay seated. And when Swami would retire back to his residence, they would start Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. One day Swami turned to the bhajan boys and he said, see them, they are doing Loka Samasta, they are praying for the world. And you all, who are you praying for? And from the next day, Loka Samasta became part of daily bhajans. Of course, in 2008, Swami changed it corrected it to Samasta Loka Sukhino Bhavantu. So, with these few experiences and lessons imparted from Bhagwan, I would like to conclude by thanking Region 2 from the organization for having me here. Each time it is a blessing to reconnect, relive, recharge, and remember every incident with Bhagwan, because you always learn a different angle. You look at it from a different optic, and you see something that you missed every time before. I would also like to thank my wife, because today is our anniversary, and of course, without her agreeing, I could not be here today. But of course, without Bhagwan, none of us would be here today. So, dearest Bhagwan, thank you so much for having all of us here in your presence. And please continue to bless us. Jai Sai Ram.